Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am here to wrap up my 5-star TBR predictions. So about a year and a half ago, I made a video about 5 books I thought I would give 5 stars to. Usually, when people do these wrap-ups, they include clips of their original video to be like, here's what I thought I was gonna think then, here's how I feel about that now. But I'm gonna do that because there's one big old problem with that original 5-star TBR video. I'm not touching it. So instead, I'm just going to talk about the 5 books that I listed in that video, tell you the star ratings I gave them, give you like a general wrap-up for how I felt about all these books, because overall I felt incredibly good about all of these books. I did not give every single one 5 stars, but I believe I gave 3 out of 5 of them 5 stars, which is pretty good as far as predicting goes. I also want to say that I like to think I've grown as a person since that original video. I didn't include a single book on this original list by an author of color, and I don't think that that's who I am as a person anymore, but I would like to apologize for the list as it stood when I made this video, because someone very rightly pointed that out in the comments of that video, and I got defensive about it instead of recognizing the privilege inherent in me only choosing white authors. So, I apologize for that. Yes, this video is very, very white, but I already made a new list. That's gonna be up in a few days, and I actually, checked in with myself about the kind of person I am now, and I think that it is a much better and more inclusive list of books I think I'm going to give 5 stars to. So, with that out of the way, and with the acknowledgement that I'm not talking about that original video, let's talk about the 5 books I thought I was going to give 5 stars to, and what I thought of them. I'm pretty sure I have these down in my notes in the order in which I talked about them, so we're just gonna go with this list whenever it was made, and hope that that is an accurate reflection. First book on my list was the Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. I believe I put this on the list because I had recently finished a reread of the Raven Cycle, which in 2017, the year that video was made, was my favorite thing that I read, and is my second favorite series ever. So I wanted to put at least one book on my list by Maggie Stiefvater under the assumption that I was going to like her writing in other books. And I think that prediction at least held true in that a lot of the things I love about Maggie Stiefvater's writing were present in this book. Scorpio Races is set in Ireland, on a small island, and on this island there are water horses who are carnivores. They frequently come up on land and kill people, and the people of this island have chosen to wrangle these horses once a year to hold the Scorpio Races, which is an incredibly deadly horse race where everyone rides their water horses, and the first line of this book is pretty famous. People are constantly using it. The first line is, "It is the first day of November, and so today someone will die." So that's pretty much how the Scorpio Races go. And this is about 2 characters, Sean and Puck. Sean, who has everything to lose if he does not win the Scorpio Races, and Puck, who is the first girl to ever compete in the races, who also has everything to lose. This was really good. It took me almost 6 months to read, which is unheard of for me. I just had a really hard time getting into the writing style, which is weird because it's just Maggie Stiefvater style. It's just that her writing is so dense, it holds up better on a reread than an initial read, so possibly I would rate this higher if I reread it, but even the first time, for as long as it took me to get through, I loved this world, I love these characters, and one of the hallmarks, I think, of Maggie Stiefvater's writing is her ability to write longing between characters, and that was definitely true of this book. The longing and the slow build of a passionate romance is incredibly difficult to do, and she does it so well, and I love Puck and Sean in this book so much. I thought it was bloody, I thought it was beautiful, and I wound up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. So not a full 5, probably because it took me so long to get into the writing, but still a solid 4. Still really enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to talk about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. And I think we all know how I feel about this book, because it was my favorite book of 2018. So, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, in case you watch this channel and somehow haven't heard me talk about this book, is about Evelyn Hugo, who is an aging Hollywood star. She was a famous actress at the golden age of Hollywood, but she has always been completely unwilling to talk about her life, her personal life, to the press. And now that she's an old woman, she invites a relatively unknown journalist named Monique to her home, and Monique is going to be given Evelyn's entire life story, and she gets to write the book about her. Evelyn is Cuban and bisexual, and Monique is biracial, I believe. And I loved this book. Like, I've talked about this book so much. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I sobbed while I was reading it. I read most of this in a couple sittings over various plane rides, and then I've talked about this, I think that when I finished reading it, I read the entire second half sitting on my couch and cried for the entire second half, and when it was over, like, actually held it to my chest as I continued to cry openly. It's an absolutely beautiful book with deeply fascinating, fucked up main characters who make mistakes and have to deal with the consequences, who are ruthless and intelligent, and it's such a brilliant book. It's such a brilliant book. So, like, this was completely accurate in my prediction. Everyone was telling me I was going to love it, and they were all right. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The next one on my list was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Kind of wild to think that in 2017 I hadn't read anything by Alice Oseman yet. I've only read 2 of her books now, but that's more than one, especially considering this and her other book, I Was Born for This, that I've read, were both favorites of 2018 for me. They were both on my favorites of 2018 list. This book is about a girl named Frances who is finishing up, like, her final year of school and prepping for university, and she's feeling more and more like her entire life is only ever going to be defined by how good she was at school. And then the one sort of non-academic thing that she does is she loves this podcast called Universe City. She does art for this podcast, and then the host of the podcast reaches out and asks if she would like to do official art for the podcast, and then at the same time Frances is becoming friends with a boy across the street named Aled. And this book is like a BFFs for life book. It's not a romance between Frances and Aled, it is just like bro-ship to end all bro-ships between the two of them. Frances is biracial and bisexual, Aled is demisexual, and this has a bunch of other queer side characters. This is like... So I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was pretty close to that 5-star prediction, but some of the fandom stuff, like, there's this distance for me where I know what I was like at 17, but I still feel kind of a distance from that version of myself, so sometimes when characters are really, really involved in fandom and fandom activities, I gain a distance from it, and that's really the only issue that I had with this book, which isn't even an issue for readers, it's a me issue. But I thought this talked about depression and anxiety spectacularly well. Sexuality, incredible discussion. This is the first time I ever read demisexual on a page, was reading this book. And I just think it's absolutely excellent. And I loved this. I loved Alice Oseman's other book that I read since I Was Born for This. I also gave that 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really want to read Solitaire. I really want to read Heartstopper, and I am dying for her new book. So, like, I was definitely right about thinking I was going to love this one, and it introduced me to a new author that I'm very, very excited about. Second to last, we've got the most recently read book on this list, and that is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which I just read last month. If you want to hear a full detailed review, my April wrap-up part 1 is where I talk about this book. It was my favorite book that I read in April, and is probably going to be in my top 3 favorite books of the year. Just like early predictions, that's what I think. This is about a crew on a spaceship called the Wayfarer, and what the Wayfarer does is it punches wormholes in space to create, like, routes of travel between different parts of the universe. This starts with a character named Rosemary joining the crew of the Wayfarer. The thing that holds the plot together is that the Wayfarer has just been offered a lot of money from, like, the space government, kind of. The space government. That's what I'm gonna call it. That's what I'm calling it. And they are tasked with punching a hole into a part of space that is very far off. It's going to take them almost 2 years to get there. This is just following the daily life of the crew members on the spaceship as they are headed out to this distant part of the galaxy to complete this job that's going to give them more money than any of them could have ever, like, dreamt of. This is the kind of sci-fi I am obsessed with. This is the kind of narrative I'm obsessed with, in that it is so many small stories and the plot is character development, and that's kind of it. Like, there is an endpoint that you're working towards, but that's not the point. The point is just to get to know these characters, to understand this world, to gain a greater understanding of destructive tendencies of different species, to see how these people support each other, don't support each other. Sometimes big stuff happens, sometimes it doesn't. The point is just this group of people together on this ship, and to me, it's perfect. There's also a female-female romance in this book, which, like, icing on the cake. It's an absolutely magnificent book that I loved every single second of, and I'm really, really eager to read more books in the Wayfarer series. There are 2 other books. I really, really want to read A Closed and Common Orbit, like, soon, and I think that I'm probably going to love that book. So, like, this was, for years, the most recommended book on my channel. This book has been recommended to me more than any other book ever, and it's good to know that everyone was right. I took that recommendation. I assumed I was going to give this 5 out of 5 stars, and I did. I absolutely loved it to pieces. And the final book that was on this original list was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which many of you may know in 2017 was also on my favorites of that year list, like, video. So clearly, when I made this video originally, I knew my reading tastes accurately. I also think it's telling that I put 3 adult books and 2 YA books on this list, and I give the 3 adult books 5 stars. It was an accurate prediction, and I think was one of the first times that marked that I was moving not away from YA, because I still really love YA, and I still give 5 stars to many, many YA books, but it was the first sign of me moving a little bit more in the middle of the two and reading more adult, because this list challenged me to read 3 books that I, at the time, didn't think were my kind of books that are 100% my kind of book. Like reading a historical fiction book, not my deal. I'm not even talking about this. Reading a big sci-fi book, not my usual go-to genre. And even reading this is a very quiet post-apocalypse book that is not about the apocalypse. It is about the people who are left. And maybe it's just that this and Small Angry Planet were, like, things I needed to discover, that I will always be more invested in character than plot, that I'm more interested in the small stories than the sweeping, big, plot twisty type of books. I just like the quietness of a person living in a space and seeing what that life is like for them. And that is very much what Station 11 is. This is about a theater troupe that is going around America. They are like a traveling theater troupe performing Shakespeare in the wake of an apocalypse. So there aren't that many people left alive, and this theater troupe goes from compound to compound and performs theater for people. There's a little bit more plot and build-up involved in this than I would say like Small Angry Planet. There is a threat that you're building towards, but this isn't about the apocalypse. It's set, like, during the days of the apocalypse, and it's set 20 years after. And both of those are given very equal play. And it's brilliant. Everyone was 100% right about this book, because this was a BookTube favorite for a while, and I thought I was going to love it. I gave it to everyone I knew, and everyone I knew read it before I did, and then they were angry that they couldn't talk to me about it, because they were like, why would you recommend a book you haven't read? Now I can't tell you how great it was. And I was like, I know, I'm mean that way. But this, I would love to reread this. This is one of those books that I feel like I read without blinking. There just came a point in reading it where I started, and when the book was over, it was like waking up. Which is exactly the kind of books I give 5 stars to. Books that I forget I'm reading because they are so immersive and beautiful and indescribably wonderful. So I was absolutely correct. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. There you go. Those are the books that I predicted I would give 5 stars to. For the most part, I was pretty accurate, and I loved all of these, and, like, will reread them in years to come. So I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about all of these books and my thoughts on them. If you have read any of these and gave them really high ratings or gave them really low ratings, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. If you haven't read any of them, let me know if I convinced you to read any of them. I'd be super curious to hear, because these are some, like, big booktube favorites, so I'm wondering if I've influenced anybody in this video or in other videos to read them. Keep an eye out in a few days, and I will have uploaded a new 5-star TBR predictions, and this one will be just me, so that when I actually read all of those books in 2 years, I can include clips of that video in my wrap-up, which will be nice. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!